Hello there! You are hearing the voice of Squire Callahan Ridgeborn here for a special edition of the Almost Battlemaster Callahan Show, an audio only version. And as always, I'm almost a Battlemaster and always a wizard. And tonight I am joined by fellow Paragon Wizard, Alan De Nimes, a Paragon from Emerald Hills. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I am super stoked to be here.
Before we get started, Alan, what does De Nimes mean? That sounds like from a different language.
De Nimes is actually, it has French origins. It is the origin of the word denim, which one of my friends down in the EH recommended that I use as a surname because Alan, obviously very difficult to find in the org. Like my second or third week coming to Amtgard, I showed up in a full Canadian tuxedo because it was super, super cold. So, I've got the blue jeans on, I've got my jean jacket on, and I made a joke to somebody who happened to be walking next to me. It was like, "Oh yeah, I'm the Denim Wizard." And that made them laugh so hard. They were like, "Oh dude, you have to do this." And from that day forward, I was just kind of the Denim Wizard. I've got a Denim Wizard hat that I have still laying around somewhere. My familiar has his own little Denim Wizard hat. Even my Paragon sash is made out of dyed denim. So it's kind of a bit we've just had going for a while.
That is so fantastic. When you eventually get knighted, your surcoat has to be a jean jacket.
I
Bring it full circle.
I am kind of of two minds about it because on one hand, that is one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life, but I've tried to be very strict about I'm the denim wizard. I don't want my whole shtick to be denim, mostly because I want to be able to play in the summertime, and I don't know if you ever worn denim in the summertime, but it sucks. So, let I don't know. We'll see what they decide to do for me.
Oh, you could almost make denim gambesons. Like, there's so much you could do inside of that. I get not wanting to pigeonhole yourself as the denim guy, but also this is fantastic. I can't wait to see more with the Denim Wizard. So let's dive right in. The Wizard class is my personal favorite. As a fellow Paragon Wizard, I have lots of opinions, and I'm going to try to keep most of them to myself because this is your Paragon interview. When you step onto the Kingdom battlefield, a competitive field, all of our questions are based on competitive fields, not park fields or small environments or anywhere where you have to be kind to people, you know? When you first step onto those kingdom fields, what's the first thing you're looking for?
So, Wizard as a class is built a lot around the idea of a very offensive power budget. Every class has a power budget, uh, which is essentially the amount of, let's say, money you're allowed to spend on certain aspects of the class. The wizard class is built all around putting as much money as you can into offense to the exclusion of other areas. In this case, it's defense. Wizard has the worst defense of any class in the game. Pretty much the only defensive abilities you have are combos like your swift teleports, which are very limited, as well as things like ward self, which is a very expensive and limited use spell. So, as a wizard, when I step onto a kingdom battlefield, first thing I'm looking for is going to be things that counter you, things that kill you. So, very good assassins, archer, very aggressive things like barbarians and monks. I'm looking for those on the enemy team to make sure I am able to go out and handle my business without somebody trying to come and shut me down. After that, I go down the list of are there any problems on the enemy team? Let's say they have a warlord who happens to know how to battle game. I need to have a plan to deal with that because it's very difficult to take out a warlord if you don't just mob him or put a wizard on him. And a lot of times that'll be my job is, hey, you're on warlord duty, go kill him. Things like that. And then
Yeah.
after you go down the flowchart of looking at what can counter you, looking at what you have to counter, now you can start looking at your team and start saying, okay, who do I have to protect over here? Who's going to be the linchpin to our defense if we need it? And who's going to be with me on offense if I need it? What combos can I do? Love seeing druids. There's a lot of cool enchantments they can give you that change the gameplay pretty hard. So at this point, once we've moved off from the offense of the game and trying to figure out what you can do to the enemy team, you have to start looking at what your team can do for you.
Okay. Yeah. How aggressive, like, how do you decide how aggressively to play in the opening moments of a game?
In the opening moments of the game, assuming you've done the aforementioned scouting, you've looked at where
Mhm.
everyone should be, you should have a pretty good idea of how safe you are. Especially if you're in a very terrain dense field or if you're in a large enough field that you can trust your team to help cover you.
Yeah.
You can kind of get a feel for how aggressive you're allowed to be. And of course, things like your archetype can affect that. You're allowed to be much more aggressive with Battle Mage than you are with the other two archetypes or with Generalist. Your spell list composition can definitely help with that. If you have good spell balls to use and you have one on hand, that can allow you to be a little more aggressive. If you happen to have a swift teleport in your back pocket, like I mentioned earlier, that can let you make plays that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get out of. But because you have that opportunity, you're able to go out and play a little more aggressive, knowing you have that option to fall back on, even if playing that aggressive might be a mistake in the first place. And then beyond all that, I'm a fairly confident wizard. I have played this class enough. Obviously, I'm a Paragon, so I feel comfortable enough that I usually start out pretty aggressive. I would recommend most new players start out aggressive, mostly because it's a lot easier to teach caution than it is to teach aggression, especially in a very complicated class like the Wizard.
For sure. What's something that newer players usually miss right at the opening of games?
Okay. There's a lot here. Wizard is one of the most complex classes of the game. I don't think that's very arguable. It has a very high skill floor and a very high skill ceiling. One of the biggest things that makes it a difficult class to play is the amount of RAM required to actually make your decisions in the game. To actually be able to look around and not only remember your spell list, but remember all of your spell schools, remember what the threats are in the enemy team, both to you and to your team as a whole, be able to remember how to play around those threats, and then and only then you can start looking at your class micro play of, okay, how do I handle this interaction that's in front of me right now? So I think a big issue that a lot of newer players have, especially right at the start of games, is I've seen a lot of players kind of stutter step or they hesitate because even if you ask them here, oh, what's the best thing to do at the beginning of this game? They could tell you. But in the moment when Leon is called and everyone starts running, they kind of freeze because there's so much happening and there's so much about to happen. A lot of times new players just don't have the experience or haven't, labbed these processes in their head yet where they can just run out and actually start taking the game actions they need to take.
Yeah, that is very similar to my experience with Wizard. So, especially with trying to teach newer players what to do, they get that analysis paralysis and they're not sure what they should be doing there.
That is always my number one feedback when I'm asked by wizards, especially newer wizards, on how to improve. 90% of the time, I can easily tell them, "Oh, just take more game actions," because it is so common that new players will let's say throw an ice ball at someone and then we'll see it land and go, yeah, I ice balled him, and then look around like lost sheep and have no
Mm-hmm.
idea what to do from there. Whereas if you watch higher level wizards, especially Paragon wizards, a lot of times they'll throw the ice ball and before it even lands, they're turning to not only look at what to do next, but they're already casting another spell at someone because they've already, while they were incanting the ice ball, looked over at someone else and decided, I need to throw this spell at them to fix this encounter. And then after they're done with that, as they're incanting that spell, they've turned again to watch somebody else to see if they need to interact with that situation. That's honestly like every wizard in the game, including the really good ones, could instantly improve their game by just intentionally doing that and intentionally making sure you have a plan for your next action while you're still doing your previous action.
I boil this down to the ABCs, always be casting. And that's what I try to tell my apprentices is if you're not doing anything, then you're doing nothing. So if the only thing you're doing is shoving a marshal, that's still doing something to advance the game state. So always be casting or moving to somewhere to be casting. Don't be standing
Absolutely.
still. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about your general equipment before we get into like any list building tactics, anything like that. What is your default archetype?
Personally, I just got a commission finished by Stitch out of the EH. Shout out Stitch, they're amazing. Of some personalized spellball bags. So I'm back to playing what my default is typically, which is Generalist, because I think Generalist is just straight up the most effective way to play Wizard if you're good. I know I get a lot
Okay,
of hate for that one
absolutely.
because Battle Mage exists. But before that, I was playing quite a bit of Battle Mage. I think there are places for the other two archetypes, but generally speaking, those two are going to be your best bet.
I strong agree. For me, I find that at least in the Rising Winds, Battle Mage is more optimal for those giant kingdom events. But anything less than a 50 on 50 battle game, list feels really, really good for. And it mostly just boils down to how physically large is the field that decides for me which one I'm going to play. Well, I have
I
those
fully
flip-flop
agree.
mostly. Yeah, if I'm going to throw an ice ball and the ice ball is going to immediately be lost and I'm not going to see it the rest of the game, it's got to be Battle Mage. But the generalist build can be so strong. So let's work through that generalist build really fast. What is your, I don't want all the spells in your generalist list. We'll get to that in a minute. But what is your physical carried equipment look like when you're playing generalist?
Personally, I'm pretty good at stick, so I take a short. I usually, like I said, I have my spellball bags, which are just the best solution for me to be able to reach down, grab the spellball I need, and charge it without ever looking away from the battlefield. Carry, if I can fit it on my belt or whatever situation I have on the day, I carry an extra dagger specifically for blocking arrows. I never fight with it. I think as a wizard, if you're ever fighting with a dagger and a sword, you could just be fighting with a sword and casting at them, but it's just my 1 point shield for arrows. That's all it is. I think every wizard should have a backup dagger, and
Absolutely.
obviously the spell balls you need. That's pretty much all you need for a wizard.
I agree. Okay. Let's talk about the tactical role of Wizard and how Wizard moves. So, for your playstyle, are you looking to kill players? Or are you looking to delay them and consume resources?
So, as a wizard, you are unique suited, or rather, I should say, you are in the unique position of being able to reach out, say someone's name, and kill them with very little counterplay if you set up your situations correctly. I think because of this, as a wizard, if you are not reaching out and making sure people die, you are not playing the class to its fullest potential, and you should probably be playing a different class. Now, I was very specific with my wording there. I don't mean you have to be killing people. I mean, you need to be making sure people die. Because the wizard is very uniquely suited to be able to not only kill people, you have your kill combos, you have Finger of Death, but also be able to reach out and interact with people in a very destructive way, even if it's just one spell. If my barbarian is off to the side fighting their warrior, that's going to be a lot of armor for him to chew through. But if I reach over and I say, "Hey, warrior, I'm going to wounding your right arm," and then ignore them and turn and continue with whatever I'm doing, I don't have to kill that warrior. Even though I'm good at that, I can let my barbarian finish the job because I don't know very many warriors who can move that fast in full plate with their offhand, right?
Mm, yeah.
So now that frees me up to reach over and start killing more people on my side, whatever that looks like for me. So I just think while wizards can eat up a lot of resources, it's much more effective for you to be able to just reach out and say, hey, this side of the field gets much more advantageous for us if these three people are dead. I'm going to make sure these three people die within the next 15 seconds.
Yeah, that track. What, with that in mind, what problems can wizards solve better than anybody else?
So this is one that I mentioned a little bit earlier. It's warlords, genuinely. We have a couple warlords who like to come to the EH and fight us, a couple from the wetlands, a couple from the EH itself. The number of times someone has walked up to me and been like, "Hey, Alan, you're on Glen duty this game," because he just happens to be there. It's like I said, Wizard can reach out and talk at someone and they die.
Yeah.
So when you have a person who is just so good at the stick aspect of the game that even if we send someone who has more armor, who has a better kit, whatever, that person may not be very successful in handling the issue of that warlord's going to chew up our flank, which is usually where a wizard comes in to be able to walk up and say, "Hey, warlord, I'm going to talk at you, and now your stick skill is nullified here. You don't have to play my game of playing around my casting instead of me playing your game of fighting you with a stick."
Yeah. Okay. I love this answer so much because I actually got started playing Wizard because of the Warlord in the Park problem. 100%. I know exactly what you mean. And I think it's so funny that you got put on Glen duty. Like, this is your job. Go deal with this.
It's so funny to me because we'll walk out and he'll just be chewing up our flank because Glenn, great dude, love him to death, love fighting with him. He is so hard to kill. And he'll
Right?
just be walking our entire flank, and then someone will grab me and say, "Hey, you're on Glen duty the rest of this game. Just go make sure he's never out of spawn." So it's very funny. Warlords are they hold a special place in my heart as they have some of the best reactions when you like your little newbie wizard comes out, clearly he's not been playing this game very long, gets a kill on them. It's always hilarious seeing what happens there.
I love that they have such a good attitude for you guys out there with the newbies. That's so wholesome. Okay. What problem should wizards avoid solving? What is not a wizard problem?
So wizards, wizards as a class. I'm trying to think of how to put this. Um, when you build your list, you will typically build it for a specific situation or a specific set of situations. For example, my personal generalist list that I use is very broad. It's got usually no more than one or two purchases of any single spell. I like to have options, and I build longevity into my lists. That way, I'm not really hampered by the fact I only have one or two options for any given situation because I always have one or two options for any given situation. However, what that means is if there is one specific situation that keeps coming up, I'm going to have trouble dealing with that. A lot of times when you build your list, you build it understanding, or at least you should be building it with the understanding of your list is going to have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. As a wizard, I think it is a very good idea to have options for dealing with those weaknesses built into your list. That way you aren't just run over the first time a paladin with Promag, for example, runs up at you. However, I think if you focus too much in gameplay in trying to deal with those situations, you're definitely going to feel that you're not performing to the best of your ability. Because if I'm playing Elemental Barrage and I walk up on a paladin, the new paladin archetype that gets Imbue Shield, right?
Yep.
I have one spell ball that can deal with them, and if I miss that spell ball or if I don't have it, they just get to walk me down, and there's nothing I can do about it. If they happen to be the one tearing up my flank, that's not my problem. At least that's not my problem to solve. At that point, you should understand, okay, my list doesn't do well against this. I haven't built very many counters to this situation into my list. My job is now go find somebody who can deal with this and then support them in dealing with that.
Okay. What is your honest, realistic kill to death ratio?
I'm going to be genuine. I don't count because uh, I grew up in a park with a someone who is now a Paragon Barbarian and exceptional at stick and a Battle Master. There was someone going for Paragon Assassin with a bow, and there was someone going for Paragon Paladin. So I had all of them at my home park, so I learned very early on how to survive because you had to.
Yeah,
So
that's a rough environment.
it was great. At Park, my KDA is awful. It is garbage. I guarantee you it is. But at Kingdom, I actually have, I think, a pretty exceptional record because I tend to put a lot of focus on longevity and surviving because I think as a wizard, the longer you're alive, the more people you can kill. And the longer you spend respawning, that's time you couldn't spend charging up your woundings, charging up your shoves, charging up your kill combos, using your kill combos. So I try to put a lot of emphasis on surviving and then just reaching out and killing people when I feel like it's necessary or advantageous.
Yeah. Let's talk about that respawn versus resurrection math. Is there a break point where you say I need to go and be respawn instead of getting resurrected?
Yes, it's definitely happened before. There are a couple things that can mitigate this because obviously, if you can be rezzed, a lot of times you want to be because again, that's more time killing people. However, if you need a lot of per lives back, let's say you've used both your steel ice, which you should be taking two of. Let's say you've lost a lot of spell balls, you've used up almost all of your per lives. You're like, man, I just need to go respawn. That can happen, but there are things you can do to mitigate this, like I said earlier, building longevity into your lists. Maybe take a couple extra spell balls instead of some per refreshes. Maybe take some chargeables. Maybe use a few more experienced buys than you normally would. And that will allow you to stay alive longer and to use your spells and reuse your spells in situations where otherwise you would have to rely on a per refresh or maybe one of your normal per lives, or maybe you just wouldn't have anything. Additionally, like I mentioned earlier with looking at your team and how they can help you, if you have any battery bards, they are a wizard's best friend. I love seeing battery bards on my team because all it takes is my Power Currency Confidence, or I restore thee to thy full potency, and now all of a sudden you can step out and you don't have to go respawn anymore. You can walk out and do whatever you want to the enemy team because your team just supplied that to you. So there are mitigating factors, but typically I like to be resurrected as often as possible.
Absolutely. Okay. What is something other classes misunderstand about the role of wizard?
So I'll give you two here.
Okay.
because they're two that I see pretty often. The first one is, I guess, kind of what wizards misunderstand about themselves, and that is that they have to kill people, or you have to be killing people, which is kind of true, but I'm going to point back to what I said earlier about making sure people die. A lot of times I will see wizards expend way too many resources killing someone when really they could throw a heat weapon or a wounding or a shove, and that will allow your team maybe a little room to breathe to deal with them. Or maybe your barbarian really needs that blood and thunder up, but if you kill that person, you spend extra resources killing them, and now your barbarian doesn't get their blood and thunder. So knowing when you should and shouldn't have to spend those resources is very valuable for a wizard. Additionally, for other classes, it's the opposite issue. So many times I will walk up with someone, let's say a warrior with a shield. I'll walk up behind them and then we'll square up against 2 or 3 people. I'll start casting and my warrior takes 3 steps forward. There's no reason for him to be doing that because if he stands there for 10 seconds, I'm going to kill one of them. And then he stands there for another 10 seconds, I'm going to kill another one of them. He's just the wall standing in front of me, making sure I can do this safely. A lot of people will play super aggressively when they have a wizard behind them. I think very similarly to how you probably should play if you have a healer behind you. Because you're allowed to play aggressively with a healer, they'll just undo whatever the enemy does to you. It's the opposite
Right.
with a wizard. You should probably be playing more defensively because that wizard is a railgun that is pointed at your enemy from directly behind you. You don't have to walk up and swing at them. That wizard's going to kill people for you. Your job is just to make sure they can do that.
Yeah. Getting those bodyguards is so clutch that you're able to do so much more as long as they don't leave.
So genuine. The number of times where I've been cruising, doing good, I cast with someone, I turn, and I see my bodyguard is 20 feet that way chasing down a monk. It's, man, you gotta love it.
The worst is when you're like, yeah, okay, my bodyguard's got this side covered, everything's going great, I'm casting down some people, and then thump, arrow right into your ribs, and you look over, and your bodyguard is just like silently dead, not doing anything, and you're like,
I think
make
my KDA
make
would
a
be
call.
much, much better if you took out every single time I've been shot in the ribs by an arrow.
Same. It would be absurd if we disregarded arrows. The arrows are the natural weakness of wizards.
100%. It's not monks, it's not paladins, it's anyone with a bow.
Anybody with a bow is going to give us a hard time. And it's part of the combat triangle, and it's good for the game that they're there and giving us a hard time. But sometimes I just want to like take all their arrows back to my base and then puppy guard them because I'm tired of getting shot all the time. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's the nature of it. So, what do you think makes Generalist Wizard so fun?
For me, it's the number of options it gives you. As a generalist, you are a bit weaker in a couple aspects when compared to the archetypes, but you have all of the options those archetypes have to deal with situations. You are allowed to purchase Ambulant once or twice and use it if you want to. You're allowed to purchase as many spell balls as you want and use them. You're allowed to purchase your Death and Flame Burbles and even some very valuable Death and Flame Burbles, like your Heat Weapons, your Wounding, your Ravage now being usable spell. But for me, really, it's just the breadth of options that you're allowed when playing Generalist. It doesn't limit you at all. It gives you a very broad capability to be able to handle whatever you see on the battlefield. And for me, I really highly value that self-sufficiency of being able to kind of take all comers, as it were.
Yeah, okay. What's the biggest mistake people make when they're playing Generalist?
Ooh, that's a good one. So, really, there are 2 big ones. It's bad list building and
Mm,
not paying attention. Oftentimes, because there are so many options with generalist, people will build lists that are just scattered all over the place, and they'll take too many options. I've seen people give me generalist lists to look over that have all 3 kill combos on them, and I admire the uh, I admire the chutzpah to try and do something like that, but I really question if that's a good use of your points. It'll spread you very thin. Oftentimes, I will see generalist lists that just don't look like they do anything. You're standing out there shouting a lot, and you're throwing balls at people, but I don't see the point. I don't know what you want to do with this. In a
mm,
very similar fashion, I'll see people on the battlefield playing generalist, and they're playing super pushed up, they're not looking around them, and oh look, they just got shanked by an arrow, or an assassin snuck up behind them, or a monk got within 20 feet of them and they let them. That's You're allowed to play certain ways with certain archetypes because those archetypes gives you tools to take care of the situations you put yourself in. As a generalist, there's a much higher emphasis placed on knowing exactly who's within 20 feet of you, knowing exactly who has a sight line on you and is looking at you, and knowing exactly what you have to do to mitigate these circumstances. That's why I genuinely think generalist is the best of the 4 ways to play wizard. It's just also the hardest to play to that level.
Is there any battle game or battlefield condition that makes you switch from generalist to one of the other archetypes?
Yes, absolutely. I, generally speaking, will not play Evoker, mostly because I think it's very boring. That's just me personally. It's exceptionally powerful in the areas where it's exceptionally powerful, but I just don't really have fun doing nothing but plodding around being a turret for spell balls. If you enjoy that, more power to you. It's an exceptional way to play the class. I just don't enjoy it. If I notice that the field is going to cause a lot of line fighting, that's when I'll play Warlock, because Warlocks are excellent at tearing through lines, being able to walk up and say, hey, your entire front line is ravaged, and if you give me 20 seconds, your entire front line is going to be dead too. That is an exceptionally powerful thing to be able to do. Similarly, if I see a ton of enemy spellcasters, or if I think that there's going to be a lot of very tight, close quarters fighting, where I'm going to have to play the range game exceptionally well, at that point I'll switch to Battle Mage. Because Battle Mage, as I'm sure you're aware, plays the footsie game. They play that, 25 to 15 foot range better than literally any other class in the game. There is not a single other caster that can really contest a good Battle Mage at that 25 to 15 foot mark, especially if you have some sort of support like from a Druid.
Absolutely. Okay. So we're gonna do a little section here. This is called the moment you lose, and it's sort of a hot take mic drop section where we're going to speak to players that are always losing to wizards or wizards that are always losing and try to tell them what they're doing wrong. So, what is the number one way wizard players play wizard incorrectly?
100% it's not paying attention. I always like to tell new players, if anyone gets within 20 feet of you and you do not know their name, the class they're playing, how quickly they can close that 20 feet, and how to kill them if they try to do that, you're already wrong. You've already made a mistake. This class, like I said earlier, takes a lot of RAM. There's a lot of thought processes that have to be happening for you to play this class optimally. And that's the number one thing I see people doing wrong, is they just don't pay attention to what's around them. And so they get randomly killed by a stray arrow or a stray player. And, less time spent alive is less time spent killing people.
All right. Behavior makes an enemy player super easy pickings for a wizard.
Being scared. 100% it's being scared. There are so many scenarios where I've had, a warrior, a scout, and an assassin walk up and try to contest me, and I pull out and charge a sphere, and every one of them backs up like they're scared. Like,
Mm,
I know it's scary. The black ball's scary. It will eat your bones, but it will only do that to one of you, and then I've got a single short and I have to stop moving to cast anything.
right.
Like, just kill me. Or, another super, super common example with every caster class is make me shove you. If you walk up to me and I say, Callahan, my power shoves thee, and then you take 5 steps backwards, I just got a free shove. Make me
Yeah.
actually cast the spell.
All right. What is something that feels really powerful for newer wizards, but just does not work at a high level?
I distinctly remember when I was a very, very young wizard seeing all these kill spells that are like, oh, if I do this to you, I can say these words and you die, or it was that and it was Fireball. Those are the two things that I was super, super, super stoked about. I remember getting to level 4 and
Mm,
finally getting Fireballs
yes.
and being so hyped because now I can pop shields. And now on the Kingdom field, I throw a Fireball and they say, shield broken, Swift to make this item whole again, and they kill me. It's
Right.
like at a super high level when people know how to play around all your stuff, kill combos, depending on the kill combo, and fireballs, like super cool, super big and flashy spells that are super fun to use. They work. if you use them right sometimes, but they're
Hmm.
definitely not the big game and like magic that you really kind of think they are when you're new.
I wish we could make Fireball more terrifying. It would be so much cool because Lightning Bolt is just objectively better than Fireball for most things.
Oh,
And
100%. For 90% of scenarios, I would rather throw a lightning bolt than a fireball. Fireball does have exceptional use cases and it's very strong when it is strong, but like I said, you've got to use it correctly. You can't just be throwing that thing and hope that it does what you want it to do.
well, and as soon as your opponent has any amount of armor, Fireball becomes significantly less good.
Oh, 100%.
And it's a feels bad moment because you're like at Park, Fireball feels just fine because most of the time people aren't bringing out all their armor anyway. But it's just one of those things, man. Like, oh yeah, Monk can wear a point of armor now, so I get my Fireball past that missile block, and I broke their armor. Neat. It just
Yeah, 100%.
it's just so underwhelming now. To yeah, that would be my answer to that question is Fireball. What habit loses battle games?
Ooh, loses battle games entirely. I'm gonna sound like a broken record here. Uh, it's not paying any attention. If we were PG-13 and I get one F-bomb, it's here. It's not paying attention because genuinely, like I cannot stress this enough. It is the number one thing I see killing wizards, and I see people get so frustrated when they think they're doing really well and they raise their finger and they're about to drag below that warrior or they're about to shatter that paladin and they catch an arrow in the hip and now they're dead.
Mm, yep.
Or they run out of spawn, they charge their lightning bolt, they sprint forward, they lob that thing, and then an assassin taps their back twice and says assassinate. It
Yeah.
I'll give you another one so I'm not just saying this over and over again. Lobbing spell balls, I don't think it's a good idea. I think if you ever throw a spell ball greater than 20 or 25 feet, you probably shouldn't have. There are scenarios where it's fine, and I think once you get super comfortable with Wizard and with knowing where your spell balls land and remembering that and knowing the use cases for all of your individual spell balls, I think at that point, if you want to lob that spell ball, I trust that you're experienced enough to handle the consequences of that. However, I think for 90% of Wizard players, if they would just shorten their range in and only use spell balls within that 25-foot range, they would immediately be more successful.
I can see that for sure. Like it's like volleying arrows right at the beginning. Like when you yell "lay on" and you shoot an arrow way over the field that hits somebody on the other side. Yeah, it feels good, but the impact of that is negligible.
Yeah,
There's
then their
absolutely
healer reaches over, fixes it, and then you have one less arrow. Good job.
yeah. Like it took res innate res recharge innate recharge times 3. It takes 14 seconds and you're down an arrow now because the
And that's best
positioning
case
just
scenario
doesn't
for
work,
you.
right? Like there's very little to be gained out of yeeting your sphere of annihilation the first second of the game and hoping it hits somebody. Unless you can pick out the only healer on their team and they don't have any monks or paladins and there's no res anywhere on their field, it's just not going to be. It's not going to work.
Even then, I think I'd rather have the sphere than kill their healer for the first like 30 seconds to a minute of the game.
Right? It's not going to make that big of a difference because at that first 30 seconds or minute of the game, how many of their players are realistically going to die and then be forced to go
Absolutely.
respawn instead of waiting for the healer? Because by killing the healer first, you put them in a scenario where it is still faster for them to wait for the healer to come back. Because by the time your front line's established, there's no downside to just waiting for 4 more seconds. Okay, so walk me through the spell list. Tell me what each part of the spell list is meant to be doing.
Okay, so I'm going to start at the very bottom, which is level 6, just because that usually works out for me. Always, or almost always, take a Finger of Death and a Sphere of Annihilation. For me, the ability to just reach out and say, you right now are dead, shut up about it, is incredibly useful. It saved a lot of games for me just to keep someone from scoring or to keep a quick res from going off. It's just super valuable to have that in your back pocket. Fear, obviously, is the best spell ball Wizards get. You can fight me about that if you want. It's just so, so good. 2 Still Life Essences, you should always be taking these if you have anything that's chargeable, and you should always have something that's chargeable, so you should always take those. My 1 Phase Bolt is specifically in tandem with my one heat weapon to try and help with monks. It's a little bit worse now that monks have armor, but I find a lot of monks still don't wear all their armor. And if they take the archetype that gives them blessing against wounds, it still works. So I find it's still usually pretty worth the take, in addition to obviously being useful against druids and having other use cases like that. I have started taking 2 woundings instead of just 1 ever since Ravage became actually usable. I'll put 1 point in Ravage and then 2 points into Wounding, because having that charge by 3 cut off your arm or cut off your leg is just super, super valuable. And now that you can charge them up to their max instead of just 1 at a time, or just having 1 at a time, it makes it worth it for me to have 2. That way I always have that option of being able to do that. My 1 Swift is for either my teleport, if I would decide I need to use it like that, or there's a really fun trick that you can do, and anyone listening to this, you're welcome, because I'm going to put you on game real quick. So there's another secret kill combo in the wizard spell list that works on anyone who has a shield. If you charge a fireball and you have your sphere in your offhand, you throw your fireball at their shield, and then while it's in midair, you say Swift, the power of void is mine to evoke, and you throw that. What happens every single time is they will block the fireball on their shield, because most people would rather lose their shield than their chest armor when fighting a wizard. They immediately see the sphere coming and their brain goes, oh, that's a sphere, block it with your shield. They block it with their shield and they stop. And they look at the sphere and they look at you and they look at the sphere and they say, I'm dead, aren't I? And then you say, and curse. And it's funny every single time.
Oh, you were so objectively correct.
It is by far my favorite thing I have ever done to anyone. I first hit it on at Park on our not quite at the time Paragon Paladin, and it he was laughing the entire way back to respawn. It's such a good combo. But for that reason,
Oh,
I always take at least 1 Swift, just because ever landing that, oh, it feels so good.
the
So,
only problem with that combo is if someone doesn't understand the when your shield is destroyed, it immediately, as long as you are still holding it, all further hits count as hitting your arm. I've had too many players argue with me about this because there's the triple fireball for if you're playing Elemental Barrage. If you throw 3
oh
fireballs at a
yeah,
shield, they're dead. And they'll try to be like, well, I didn't get a chance to drop it. I'm like, that doesn't matter. The fact that you were still holding the shield when the fireballs hit it mean that you're dead, and they'll argue with you. But I love
100%.
that.
So moving down to level 3, I am on Drag Below. It's my personal favorite. It's just really fun to use. Plus, it lets me use lightning bolts. I take 2 of those along with 2 entangles for 1 point, specifically for my Drag Below. If you take this setup, you can kill anyone in the game who isn't a paladin or otherwise immune to death by just throwing a lightning bolt or an entangle, and then Drag Below. Maybe you'll have to throw in a break con every now and then, depending on what they have, but usually that'll take care of most problems for you. For similar reasons, I have 1 hold person, often because it's faster. For me, especially once you get to a certain level of being able to talk quick, it's faster to be able to hold person someone than to reach down, pull out a spell ball, maybe have to check if you have one, if you haven't been paying attention, and then charge and throw it. Plus, you can miss. It's if the warrior's running at me and he's got AA on, I don't want to have to try and land on his shield. I don't want to try, and hit his sword. I'm just going to hold person, and then I'm going to drag him below, and then if I'm quick enough, I can reach up and steal life before he does anything else.
Yeah.
One extension, which is you don't use it ever. Extension is not here for the reason you think it is. It's not real. Act like it's not because you don't use it. Uh, until you
Okay.
get down to your 2 dispel magics. That's what your extensions are for, because invariably there will be someone who's always stacked. And first of all, any wizard listening to this, if you don't have Dispel Magic in your list, it better be because you're in an archetype that doesn't let you take it. Dispel Magic is the best spell on the wizard list, hands down. Shut up about it, you're wrong. It is just the best. You should be taking at least 1, probably 2. And your extension is literally just so you can always land that Dispel Magic when you really need to. Because I have seen entire games won and lost on the back of, oh, that paladin's golem stack just got removed, or this warrior now doesn't have his AA on, or that druid circle is now broken for just a second.
Yeah. I usually grab at least 1 ambulant instead of the extension, but vibe check pass, yes.
Absolutely. It's Ambulant also works for this. The kinds of games that we tend to play in the EH, I find extensions usually a little bit better. I'm pretty good at getting good angles and looking around cover to try and tag someone with it. But also, if people know you have an extension, versus an ambulant, if we're talking about very high level play, it spooks people. People get so scared to actually step out and look at you if they know you can reach out and, oh, that archer's been bothering you, but they happen to have Pro on. Hey, guess what, buddy? You're not going to have Pro on if you can ever see me because I can see you. I just find it's a very easy way for me to be able to utilize that. Moving down to level 2, obviously we take that one teleport, not just because it's a get out of jail free card if you happen to, again, not be paying attention, but it also, like I said earlier, allows you to play very aggressively, knowing you have that in your back pocket. You can reach out and you can go make plays that you otherwise shouldn't really make or shouldn't be allowed to make because you have that swift teleport or just a normal teleport. There have been a ton of times where I've needed to die and, oh, look, my spellball's over there. I'm just going to teleport next to their archers, kill at least one of them, and then we'll just see what happens. Maybe I'm in their backline for a second and it's funny. And you just got assassined by a wizard, which is always hilarious.
Absolutely.
Naturally,
Okay.
you you have to be taking the one release. Release is the second best spell on the wizard spell list because CC is king, and you really should be taking a release, even if it's just for you. Nothing worse than getting terrored and then having to walk 50 feet that way and stand there for a few seconds, and then walk 50 feet back this way to even interact with the game. Being able to use it on your warrior who right in front of you got frozen, reach out, swift release, and then break con whoever's trying to do something else to him. Now you just tore that whole plan apart, and they've got to deal with a warrior. Their healers probably is suppressed, and you just get to do whatever you want now. Like I said earlier, 2 entangles just for that drag below, and because it's kind of nice CC. 1 break con is clutch. I think break con is such an underutilized spell. It is so fantastic to be able to just say shut up real quick to anyone you want to, denying reses, denying summon corpses so you can reach over and get a steal life off, denying enchantments is super fun. If you're within 50 feet or within a couple feet of 50 feet at the start of the game, stepping out a little bit, saying Druid extension, shut up, is really funny because now you just added 10 seconds onto whatever their incant time was.
Well, especially if they have one of those long incants and they're like 2 of the 5 way through, you're just cooking them at that point. And you're taking 2 players out of the equation for 10 seconds. You're delaying the assembly of the front line. I love that.
Okay, so level 1, you gotta take your shove. Shove, once a life, is charged by 3. Exceptionally useful spell. You always have it available. I usually like to take 2. Sometimes you can't really fit it into the list depending on what you're trying to do with the rest of the list, but at least 1 shove is really, really, really valuable because of that charge by 3. It's just so useful to have. My 1 heat weapon, like I mentioned earlier with the phase bolt, that's mainly for monks that try and deal with me, although it's very useful to be able to adjust the odds, I'll say, in different skirmishes or engagements that you see on the battlefield. Got to have your short if you're not running a dagger and staff, which I think you probably shouldn't be if you have spell balls. And then my 3 force bolts, they were with me when I started this game. They're going to be with me when I end this game. Force bolts are just so versatile, and they allow you to do so much. You should be able to reach out, throw an arrow at somebody. It's so nice.
Long-term fans of the channel know I have controversial opinions on force bolts, and I hate it. I hate force bolts so much.
No, but it's so good.
It's so bad. Literally every other
Force
spell
bolt
ball is better than force bolts.
No, it's not the best spell ball. It's not the worst spell ball on the wizard list, and I will fight you about that one. But
I mean, you can make an argument that
just...
suppression bolt is worse than force bolt, but if it's a 1-to-1, force bolt is worse than suppression bolt.
Sure, if it's a 1-to-1, but it's a 3-to-1 because you get 3 of them.
Right, but my big argument here is if you look at all the rest of the spells on the wizard list, every time they give you multiple things for the 1 point of magic, it's because the thing they're giving you sucks.
I mean, yeah, force bolt isn't the best thing to be able to do, but I just find it useful. I'll be honest with you, the majority of it is if you're going up against someone who is Florentine or who doesn't wear armor, it's very useful to be able to try and lob that almost as your own Florentine sword. You can try and get around a shield with it. You can try and pop a sword with it. My knight, Mabtic, out of the EH, he likes to do this thing where he'll hold a spell ball in his hand, usually with ice balls, but he does it with force bolts too, and he'll hand block a weapon with it. But right before he makes contact, he'll let go of it so that the weapon hits the force bolt or the ice ball, and then weapons broken, weapons frozen, or the player is frozen, and it's really cool. It's gotten him out of a lot of really neat situations. I haven't been able to utilize it super well yet because I'm not quite that accurate with my hand blocks, but it's just a fun little thing you can do.
Oh my gosh, I think we finally found an actual use for Force Bolt. If you can pull off dropping the Force Bolt onto the weapon as it swings at you, I will say that Force Bolt could be useful. But other than that incredibly niche scenario, hot dog. Okay, well now that we've looked at your list, we know what you're generally doing. What spells are you using for bluffing here?
So this was a little bit of an odd one. I was trying out a couple different things at this most recent event. Oftentimes, I will be using pyrotechnics. I very, very often will have at least one pyrotechnics on my list, and that's the one I'll be using to bluff with the most. It's naturally 50 feet, so you never have to extend it. It is super detrimental for any marshal to get hit by it. Oftentimes, it alone, just starting it and not quite finishing it, will be enough for people to drop their weapons. And if you just did that, you almost got a free heat weapon out of it at 50 feet.
Hmm. Yeah.
Beyond that, of course, Ravage, a lot of people, if they actually know what it does, don't want to get hit by Ravage because they don't want everyone to have poison weapon against them. Similarly, wounding, just cutting off your leg where you're maybe out of position, are super annoying, especially if you've got armor on. So usually those are the ones that I try to be bluffing. Obviously, I think if you're ever not casting, you probably should be casting at someone, even if you don't intend to finish it. Like you said, always be casting. But those are the ones that I use the most.
What enemy class are you most planning for before the game starts?
So if you had asked me this, 6 months, a year ago, I probably would have told you assassins because I firmly believe that assassin versus wizard is a pure skill matchup with a very slight advantage given to the assassin player. However, now I think that monks are, I don't think it's arguably the hardest counter to wizard that exists in the game right now. A monk playing properly and with proper gear shouldn't ever be killed by a wizard and should always result in either the wizard dying, the wizard running away, or the wizard using some sort of defensive mechanism like a swift teleport to survive. Because they get that 1 point of armor, or in a slightly easier situation, the blessing against wounds, as well as being able to carry, 2 swords, plus they have throwies, plus they have as many swords as they can fit on their hip, plus, oh, what, maybe I want to use a long or a great today. Like, it's just so much that's stacked up against Wizard. They have so many things that are good against us. That 1 point of armor, the throwy, Florentine. It's just so, so hard for us to actually get anything done against them. Pretty much the only recourse you have now is drop a sphere on their knee, and that's pretty much it. Anything else, and you kind of have to play super cagey with a monk. So I tend to put a lot of thought into not only how to deal with monks pre-game in building my list and in planning out the encounters in my head, but also in the moment. I try and put a lot of extra thought into making sure that encounter goes smoothly because you kind of have to.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. What spell do you wish you had more of at the end of every single game?
Finger of Death, I always want more, just hey, you're dead. Sphere of Annihilation, I wish we could take more of them. These aren't real answers, I know, because you can't take more spheres and you shouldn't take more than 1 or 2 fingers unless you're playing Warlock. Realistic, I almost always wish I had more spell balls.
Mm.
Because, like I said, I build for longevity, and a lot of times that will result in me not really caring if I don't get to go respawn for a while, and it will be very often where I get put into a really intense situation, and I throw a couple spell balls at someone, and then a warrior walks up, and I reach down, and well, all of my stopped state spell balls are gone. Now I've got to figure out another way to deal with this warrior. Maybe a fireball. Oh, he blocks it with his AA. Okay, well, what do I do now? Situations like this, when there's a very high density of targets that you need to spend resources to kill, that's really the weakness of my specific list, and so that's why usually I find myself lacking spell balls. But it's really hard to fit really more than I have into this list without diluting it in the day-to-day, the gameplay loop of doing what I want to do.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, let's talk about like positioning, range, threat control, things like that. What is your internal signal that you need to back off from your current position?
So if I there's a lot of things that go into this. There's a lot of combat calculus that happens in the moment. For me, the biggest indicators are how much backup do I have? or do I have any? How many people, how many resources are the enemy team willing to put towards killing me in this moment? How
Okay.
many lanes of egress do I have? And how easy is it for the enemies to close that off? This is a lot, but uh, when you're playing Wizard confidently, you have to be able to walk into kind of dicey situations and exert your will over the battlefield there. You have to be the one to walk up and say, hey, this is what's going to happen. Even if this is scary, even if there's an archer looking at me right there, they've got a monk and a paladin right here, and they have a warrior right here to bait me in. Even if all that's true and you kind of don't have very much support, you have to be willing to walk up and say, I'm going to enter this situation that I know isn't super, super safe for me, but I'm going to do it confident that I'm going to play it correctly. So, really, for me, the big deciding factor is, do I think this situation is one that I can play correctly? And if I play this correctly, will the outcome be acceptable to me? And if I look
Mm.
at that situation, and even if I play it correctly, it's kind of a bad situation to be in, I'll back out of there. I do not want any 50-50s. I don't want to walk up and give my opponent the chance to really play with me. I want, if I'm walking up and doing something, I want to be able to walk up and say, hey, this is what's going to happen. And I want the enemy's options to be, yeah, okay, that happens, or I'm going to not be here anymore.
Yeah.
And if I can't do that, I'm out.
Who do you think the worst person to spend a spell on?
I'm going to say the easy answer, which is newbies, but it's not because they're bad and you should be saving your spells for better players, quote unquote. I think it's genuinely because, it's like we said earlier, what's the easiest way to take out a wizard? Peasant railgun him, throw a bunch of newbies at him, and say, hey, what's that spell do? Oftentimes, I won't play interactions with new players very well just because I know the second I whip out a yellow spell ball, I'll throw it and they'll say, what does that do? And then I'm sitting there explaining it to them and they say, oh, okay. And then they get to sit there and look at me dejectedly while I drag below them because they don't know the counterplay to this. And then there's just a whole lot that I don't like. I just try to avoid it. I don't want to try and do that. That is not why I go play games, is to go explain what my spells do to people. I'll do it. I'll happily do it if you ask, but I really try to avoid going out and doing anything to newbies that isn't shove or stick.
It is a feels bad moment to devastate that poor noob and just, yeah, I know what you mean. How do you know when you are winning a game, and what do you do when you know that your team is winning?
So when hmm, often for me, I will know that my team has control of the game and we are moving it towards our goals in the game when I feel safe. When I can walk out pretty decently and I can look over the battlefield and I can say there are not very many places here where I would feel unsafe to walk to right now. Because again, wizards are very squishy. We don't have any armor, we don't have a shield, we have a short and maybe a long if you're crazy. The most even to set up you can get is a staff and a dagger. But even then, if I can look out over the field and say, I can walk most of these places, anywhere the light touches, I can go, and I'm safe. At
Mhm.
that point, I'll know pretty much we're winning the game.
What spell, or not what spell, what enchantment rather, changes how you play the most?
So it used to be Gift of Air because Gift of Air is broken and not a fair enchantment on Wizard. And I say broken not in that it's too powerful, but in that it shouldn't work the way it does. Gift of Air, for those of you that aren't intimately familiar, means you can't use weapons, you can't wield weapons at all, but anything that hits you that is not specifically a shield crushing or armor breaking hit from a melee weapon, instead of doing any, like dealing a wound or anything, it instead makes you go insubstantial. And you can immediately choose come out of insubstantial there or go back to base and then come out of insubstantial there. What this does is it means you are now able to put enemies in situations where they are strictly unable to interact with you. I think that is an incredibly powerful thing to be able to do. And if you have a druid who's willing to give that to you, I would recommend trying it out at least a couple times on a kingdom field because it makes you feel so powerful to be able to walk out and do that. However, for me personally, the thing that makes me play the most differently from how I normally play is lycanthropy.
Mm.
Because, like I said, I'm pretty decent at stick. I am not really afraid to go square up with the warlord. I'll lose, but I'll go do it. If you give me a point of armor, or excuse me, 2 points of armor and pro command, I go crazy. I'm not playing wizard anymore. I'm playing single short 2 points of armor, but I can also break con you and drag you below. It is it is my go-to for anything like a Phoenix League style setup. I love, love, love having a bow druid in the back throw lycanthropy on me, and I just get to go crazy. It is my favorite way to play wizard by far. You shouldn't play wizard that way. You will be much more effective if you do something like Gift of Air or even like Pro. But God, I love it so much. Being able to just walk out, swing your sword around, and someone like tries and break cons you, say immune, idiot, kill them, and then somebody walks up try to 1v1 you because you're just a little wizard. Nope, I got hands. I kill him. It's so good.
Yeah, and okay. Let's say you're working with another player. You're there. You've got a warrior who's being your front line, and they're just killed out from under you. You're in a bad situation. How do you immediately adjust from losing that support?
So if you are pushed up super far with the understanding that you have a supportive team around you, and that supportive team is no longer able to support you for whatever reason, there are two things I will say to this. The first is you should already have a plan for this. A lot of wizard gameplay is predicated on the idea that you have done your homework, quite literally. I have
Mhm.
labbed 1v1s and 2v2s in my head for, I don't think it's crazy to say hundreds of hours at this point. I pretty much know how to handle any given situation I will find on the battlefield. And because of that, my flowchart runs very smoothly. I'm able to very quickly and easily change from this is the situation we're in to this is the situation I want to be in. How do I get there? That being said, if you have, let's say you reach out and you say, we need to push this flank super hard. I think I can do it with a couple dudes. I'm going to grab a warrior and a scout, and I'm going to grab those two guys and I'm going to go. You should understand if that warrior dies, it'll be really hard to actually do anything for them. However, you should have, ideally, you're playing with good players, you're playing with people you play with regularly, you should have an idea of what to do if something happens. Let's say that warrior does die. Your team, you three, should know that warrior true grits, your scout releases them, and then you keep going. Let's say you're not running that particular setup. Let's say you're running a paladin and an assassin, and the paladin dies. Well, they were the guy you were going to use to res you, but they just got killed by an icy blast wizard, and you weren't quick enough on the swift release. Well, at this point, you should understand that assassin should now just get out of dodge because they can, and you might have to spend some resources getting out as well. You should ideally have a swift teleport if you're in a super aggressive position like this. If not, maybe use another defensive tool like throwing an ice ball at a good target. All that being said, you should already have a plan, and you should be able to adapt. You should be comfortable enough with your spell list, with the game mechanics, with how Amtgard plays, and with the people you're with to be able to adapt to that situation and be able to say, okay, our front line just died in this little push we have. Do I feel confident in us being able to accomplish what we need to accomplish here? Or do we need to cut our losses, not fall into the sunk cost fallacy, and just dip out? That way we can maybe try again later or go do something more worthwhile somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. You feel that you're losing the current battle game. What do you do to attempt to stabilize and come back?
So, like I said, I build my list for longevity. I try to use as few resources as possible to do the things I want to do because I find that will typically lead to long-term success. When you start to lose a battle game and you can feel your team's getting pushed in super hard, at this point you need to take calculated risks to um try to turn the tide here and try to get better rewards from that. Typically I'll say if you're a wizard, you should be making low risk, high reward plays, and failing that, you should be making low risk, low reward plays. If you feel more confident, maybe you can start taking riskier plays. At this point, when you're in the 11th hour, you've got to throw a buzzer beater out there. Use your resources, take risks, make very high risk, high reward plays. Maybe you run out and, hey, sorry, buddy, you've got to go single short versus sword and board here for a second because you need to buy your team a little bit of time to go do something. Maybe now you're just straight up going to swift teleport into their backline and say, hey, I'm going to go harass their healer and their archers. Maybe I'm not going to kill many of them. Maybe I don't kill any of them. But if I can take that pressure off of my team for just a second, where they're not rezzing crazy in the back, where their archers aren't just staring down our backline right now, give your team some room to breathe. At that point, that might be a consideration you want to have, where maybe dying here or putting yourself in a situation where you know you're going to die or where you know you're not going to be super efficient might be better because you know you're going to be effective.
When you're on a team, what information do you prioritize calling out to people?
So it is in this order: objective, flanks, and target. Obviously, if they are doing the objective or we need to do the objective, and there is something I can say right now to put us ahead in the game, obviously you need to do that. If there is someone flanking who I think my team isn't going to see, I mean, you always have the classic, like, the assassin who walks around, doesn't really say anything, doesn't do anything, and they don't say they're dead, kind of walking around, call that out. It's very easy to get caught off guard by something like that, or by a barbarian who just blasts through your flank and now is going to run your back line. If you see something like that happening, you should say something about it, and that goes for everyone, not just wizard. Because funny enough, you're squishy. You're probably in the back somewhere. Maybe you're playing, maybe not full backline, maybe you're playing 1.5, but you have a vested interest in making sure your team doesn't get flanked. Because guess what, buddy? You're the one they're flanking.
Sure.
That's a really big one to call out. And then if there are any targets that your team needs to take care of that you, for whatever reason, can't take care of, at that point you need to call them out so that your game plan can move forward.
What callouts are you specifically listening for from your team to boost you?
So the biggest one is going to be problems. If anyone has significant problems dealing with another player or dealing with another set of players, that is like number one. Like, alarm bells should go off in your head. You should know that's my job to go deal with, more than likely. As a wizard, you have the tools, especially if you have a well-built spell list, to go deal with pretty much any issue your team could face, whether it's just throwing a spell out there, throwing out a couple kill combos. Maybe you just need to buy your team a little bit of time to regroup. At that point, you as a wizard should be able to reach out and say, I'm going to devote some resources to taking care of this. That way I don't have to spend resources patching up whatever they break later. Lords are a great example of this. If I hear that Glenn is just absolutely shredding a flank, yeah, I've got to go deal with that, because if I don't, he's going to kill me.
Right. Is there any behavior from your teammates that make you dramatically better?
So the first one is people who know, well, first of all, call outs, right? People, like, I don't know who to kill sometimes if I don't see them directly in front of me, or if my team doesn't tell me they're a problem. If I look over to flank and we're kind of at a standstill, I think, okay, I don't really want to go spend a lot of resources to go break that line. I'm not going to. But if someone runs over to me and says, hey, they have a golem stack over there that's really killing us, we can't really push through it, can you go take care of it? Absolutely, I'll go take care of that for you. The second one, and this is more of a microplay thing, is someone who knows how to play around your spells. The thing that gets my goat the most is when I start heating someone's weapon and my teammates just stand there and they look at him and they wait for me to try and heat his weapon. And then, of course, they hide it behind him or they hide it behind a shield, and then I have to stop, and then we're right back where we started. Like, buddy, fight him. If you know how to play around my spells, you are my favorite person on the battlefield, 100%.
Okay. What's something that a wizard stops doing when they get good?
Ooh, I know people want to hear me say miss spell balls, but no, I miss those things all the time. Honestly, hard charging. I say hard charging as in actually doing the charging can't and not just killing people. As a wizard, I feel like you should almost never be charging anything more than a charge by 3. I know that kind of goes against what a lot of people will tell new players, but when you get more experience, a lot of times your time will be better spent going out and interacting with the battlefield, even if it's in a slightly suboptimal way, rather than stepping back to do a charge. I can't tell you the last time I did a charge by 10 on a kingdom field. That's what Steel Life is for. I don't bring charge by 10 so I can go sit there and say the charging can't 10 times. I take him so I can say Steel Life, and now all of a sudden my suppressed sword is charged. I'll find the more experience you get as a wizard, the less you will find yourself needing to charge your spells, because either you have alternate ways to deal with the issues those spells would solve for you, or you are able to do the combat calculus in your head and say it is more effective for me right now to interact with the battlefield in this way, rather than stepping back and ensuring I can interact with the battlefield a different way 30 seconds from now.
Okay. What mistake do you still make when the battlefield's super chaotic?
Missing archers. Hey, funny enough, paying attention. Crazy. The number one mistake I still make 100% is getting shot by archers. It is we have some really good ones in the kingdom. We have some really good ones who've come from out of kingdom, and 100% of the time, every single battle game we go into, I just accept I'm gonna get shot by an archer somewhere because a lot of them know, especially like the counterplay between a good wizard and a good archer is so fun because you'll both be watching each other and you know you're watching each other, but you're both trying to pretend like you're not watching each other. And I'm trying to bait them into shooting an arrow, and they're trying to bait me into looking at someone else. It's so much fun, but God, they get me so much. I hate it.
Oh, yes. Okay. What's something newer players are consistently failing to notice that you're relying on as a signal?
So a lot of times, new players will tend to focus very they'll focus very, very, very hard at what's directly in front of them, and they will try to a situation will happen, let's say, and they will look at that situation and they will say they'll identify the players in the situation, they will correctly identify how to deal with those players in that situation, and they'll go do it. And that seems fine until they just do that over and over and over and over again, and they aren't looking at the battlefield as a whole and examining how they could where they can be the most effective and what situations they should be paying attention to. It goes back to what we said earlier about making sure your strengths and weaknesses of your list. A lot of new players will just walk forward and they'll say, "Oh, there's two monks in front of me. Guess I better stick it out and make sure I'm on this flank because otherwise they'll run through us." But like, just go yell at somebody. Go yell at your barbarian to come take care of that. That's not your job. You shouldn't be the one having to deal with this. And I've had a lot of new players really don't understand the concept of this isn't my job. That goes for everyone, by the way. If you're listening to this, you don't play Wizard, everyone should know what their job is on the battlefield. You should know what you should and shouldn't take care of. But especially Wizards, it's super valuable to be able to say, oh, I know this isn't my job. I'm not going to worry about it, but let me go make sure somebody else is worrying about it.
Yeah. What are you currently working on trying to improve?
This is a really good one. For me, it's remembering where my spell balls land. A lot of
Mm,
times I try to stay within that 25-foot range because that's just where I operate the best. I think spell balls should be used very tactically. It's why I have just one or two of each of them. And in my experience, if you're good at that and you're good at retrieving your spell balls very quickly, it works exceptionally well. But if you ever, oh, dude, my pet peeve on battlefields is when a well-meaning reaver or a well-meaning player will pick up my spell ball and move it somewhere off to the side so it doesn't get stepped on or anything. But now I don't know where it is.
right.
I used to be much better about remembering exactly where they were and going and picking them up quickly. I've kind of gotten a little lazy on it since I started playing Battle Mage so much because I haven't had my spell pouches. Now that I have them again, I'm starting to play it a little more. I'm starting to get back into the swing of things. But 100%, it's remembering where my spell balls land because if you always have access to your spell balls, they're broke. They're so good if you can just use them 100 times.
Yes. It also sucks when a rival wizard picks up and then uses your spell ball. Like, where did my ball go?
Oh,
Why?
yeah.
I like arrow sharing is a thing, but you have to ask permission. Why is spell ball permission not a thing that we have to get? How do you practice mentally and physically outside of normal game day?
So, as far as physically, I'm a pretty physically fit person. I go to the gym a couple times a week. I lift weights. I do some cardio, and I think cardio is very important for most wizards. I think you should be able to run very, very fast if someone else who can run very, very fast is chasing you, which they almost certainly will be. You're a wizard.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, a lot of the wizard sort of strategy, a lot of the mental preparation you have to do is just homework. You literally just have to sit there and say, okay, uh, what are my spells? What are the schools of my spells? What classes will that not work against? If this class walks up to me, how can I deal with them? What if they have a different kit? How can I deal with that? If the warrior walks up to me, how does my plan change if they have a shield versus if they have two swords versus if they have a great? If a monk walks up to me, how does my plan change for them if they've got throwies versus the Florentine, et cetera, et cetera? You have to figure out exactly what you're going to do in any given situation, and then you have to drill that, literally just running through the spells in your head, if you're at work and you're able to talk and people won't look at you funny, sit there and spit out the incants. Practice your incants. Get them smooth, get them clear, get them where people can understand them even if you're talking fast. And then run through all your flowcharts. Run through, oh, a scout walks up to me. I start to do this to them. They declare this enchantment. I start to do this to them. They declare this resistance or this immunity. I start to do something else to them. And you just have to run through that in your head until you are so good at it. You're on the battlefield, someone walks up to you, you don't even think. It's like learning a new language and you don't translate table is mesa in Spanish, so I will say mesa to mean the table. You just look at a table and you say mesa. It's like that, where instead of looking at the warrior and saying, ah, they're a warrior, I'm going to throw this spell ball. Oh, they have AA, I throw this. Instead, you look at the warrior and you immediately, you just naturally reach for the spell ball, and then they declare AA, and without even having to think about it, you're already reaching for your next thing to do. So much of playing a wizard well is having that flowchart and being able to do the combat calculus in the moment and being able to deal with the situations as they arise with a speed and fluidity that means that you being as squishy as you are isn't going to be detrimental.
Yeah. All right. So we have 2 sections left. We have our rapid fire and spicy section, and then our final thoughts. So, rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
What common advice is wrong?
I will say always take a short. That's what I heard when I was young. Baby wizard, always take a short. I think if you're bad with a short, staff and dagger is just better.
Yes. Okay. What should a fighter ignore early on that new players fixate too strongly with?
Ooh, kill combos, specifically Icy Blast and Shatter. I think that if you rely on those super, super hard as a new player, it'll build really bad habits.
Okay. What spell do people rely on too heavily?
Ice Ball and Icy Blast. Like I said earlier, those engender really bad habits, and if you ever catch yourself without them, you really are going to hope that you put in the practice to not need them.
What do people blame for balance that is actually just a skill issue?
Being killed by wizards. 100%. People people will say wizards are broken, and then like a warrior will look at me and say, "Yeah, dude, wizards are broken. You can do whatever to me, and I can't do anything about it." And I look at them when they can. They have 6 points of armor, whatever weapons they want. They have AA. They can pre-shake it off whatever I do to them, and then they can resurrect themselves, and then also they can like whatever, dude. It's just I understand it can be a rough matchup sometimes, but genuinely skill issue. Figure it out.
Yeah. Do you have a hot take about Wizard that people are going to disagree with you on?
Ooh. A hot take for Wizard. Okay, this is really good. Wizard, if played exceptionally well, near perfectly, is stronger than Druid by a mile. But Druid is easier enough that people don't know that. Because most Wizard players are secretly really bad at playing Wizard.
That's so true. Yeah, the ceiling for skill expression on Wizard is almost uncapped. And Druid's floor is so high that it's easy to mistake the two.
Absolutely. I think a lot of what makes Druid so powerful and makes it the S tier class that it is that it does everything. It's not necessarily how well it does things, because it does do things well, and it does kind of break the power allocation in the game by allocating its own power budget to other players, which I don't think is really healthy. But I think it also doesn't have that high of a ceiling. Like once you've gotten over that, the actual raw power of the class is nowhere near what a really, really good wizard can do.
Yeah. Like I agree so much right now. Okay. Let's do our final thoughts and get you out of here because we've been going for a while now. What advice would you give someone that's stuck at an intermediate skill level?
Genuinely perfect your fundamentals, and I say that word very explicitly, get them perfect. You should not be casting fire-based spells at anti-paladins. You should not be casting shoves at monks. You should not be wounding paladins. Your fundamentals of knowing your spell schools, knowing immunities and resistances, knowing common immunities and resistances granted by enchantments, you should know all of these. Before you ever step on that kingdom battlefield, you should look across the field and you should have a plan for every single person. And it's a lot. This is an intense amount of RAM to have to be thinking through. And there's so much you have to do before you ever play as a wizard to actually be able to play it effectively. But like, that's the price we pay for playing this class and being able to have a skill expression that high, is that your fundamentals cannot be flawed. They have to be perfect.
Absolutely. Okay. If someone from your home kingdom of Emerald Hills is watching this, or listening rather, and they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
So I'm on Facebook. For the most part, if I see that you have garb in your Facebook photo, I'll accept your friend request. Regardless, I will accept any messages that come in. I'm also here on Discord. And if you're in the Kingdom page, you can see me occasionally post in there. You can just find me on there and message me. I'll accept any messages from people. Just tell me you're from the EH so I don't think you're some crazy stalker or something.
Yeah. Okay. If someone copies your spell list but fails to copy your mindset, where are they going to fail?
They are going to put themselves in a lot of situations where they don't feel very effective. My spell list is tailored very specifically for longevity and for efficacy across a broad range of situations. But it's built that way because I feel confident that I can step out and I can engage with these situations with this wide range of spells. I can utilize every spell that I brought. It's very seldom where an entire game goes by and I haven't cast every spell at least once. And if you aren't comfortable using a range of spells that wide, or you aren't comfortable handling the number of situations this is built to deal with, you're going to find it lackluster.
All right. Well, with that, Alan, thanks for coming on the show tonight. It's been such a fun time talking Wizard with you. I think we both could probably go for another couple hours and just keep talking about Wizard because it's such a fun class. It has so much nuance to it. We could dive into deep spells, but unfortunately, we do have to be done and move on with the rest of our real lives. So I thank you for taking this time out of your day to come and chat with me about my favorite part of my favorite game.
I really appreciate being here, and I hope that the rest of your wizarding goes as well as this has.
Oh, well, thank you. To you, our listeners out there, if you want more excellent battle gaming content, please subscribe. Get down in the comment section with any questions you have. You've got two pretty good wizards in here that are happy to share our opinions with you if you have any questions to ask. And I will see you all in the next video.